In November of this year, registered voters across Kansas will get to select a new governor. But first, party-affiliated voters will have to choose who represents their respective party. Sitting down with us today is Governor candidate Ken Selzer and his Lieutenant Governor running mate, Jen Sanderson, excuse me. How you guys doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good to be here.
So let's get to know you guys a little bit better. So what is your individual stories and how did you guys end up becoming running mates?
So my name's Ken Selzer. I'm a CPA. I had a career in business up until 4 years ago when Kansans chose me to be their insurance commissioner. In the 4 years since, I've run the insurance department in just like you would a business. We've tried to lower cost, reduce the number of employees, and improve productivity and customer service. It's worked, and those same concepts can be applied to the broader state government. I'm from Gossel, Kansas, rural central Kansas, went to K-State, and then went from there to the Kansas City area to practice as a CPA, eventually got an MBA, married a girl who grew up in rural Kansas, just south of Kansas City, and we've been married 38 years now, 2 daughters, and a brand new grandbaby.
Oh, congratulations.
So I'm so happy that Jen Sanderson from Goodland joined the ticket. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Jen Sanderson. I grew up in Plainville, Kansas, which is just a few short miles from Fort Hays. Graduated from Fort Hays State University. Go Tigers.
Yeah.
Yay! I am in Goodland raising my family here in western Kansas. I'm a small business owner. I've got a deep knowledge of community banking. I spent most of my adult career in community banking, and it gave me a great opportunity to know what it takes to run a not so small business. And I'm just thankful for all of that knowledge, and it's made me more successful all the way through.
Okay. How did you guys become running mates? How did you end up selecting Miss Sanderson as your running mate?
We met each other through Leadership Kansas. She is the immediate past chair of Leadership Kansas. Kevin Sanderson, her husband, was in my class 2 years ago. So we got to know each other well, and through that I got to know Jennifer well. Clearly, having somebody here advocating for and from western Kansas and central western Kansas was good for the ticket. So I'm so thankful she joined. She knows things about community colleges and tech schools too that are really, really good for us together.
So I suppose both of you combined represent 2 halves of Kansas, essentially. You representing more of the eastern and the western in this case.
And go ahead, Jen.
I think it's important to understand that we both realize Kansas is a big state. The opportunities, the challenges, and the successes of one part of the state are totally different from the other. And the economies within them are quite different. It's maybe not so much us versus them, it's working together because we're Kansas.
Right. All right, well, let's get, go ahead.
I know a little bit about bringing Kansas together. I'm a Wildcat that married a Jayhawk. My wife has got a master's from Kansas, so we know about bringing the parts of Kansas together. And remember, I grew up in rural central Kansas,
right.
live in a more populated area now after I worked in business for 40 years. But the point is, a lot of similar interests, just like Jen said, a lot of similar interests. We need to talk about bringing Kansas together, not the different parts of it. I very much understand and am part of rural central Kansas, just like I am the more eastern part of the state. We see each other often. I've spent a lot of time out here in western Kansas and in Hays and beyond, southwest Kansas, northwest Kansas. So we've really done a good job of covering the whole state.
All right. Well, let's get down to some of your party platform ideas. So on your website, you state your administration will, quote, focus on high-quality jobs that will grow our economy. What exactly do you consider to be those high-quality jobs, and how will they be created in Kansas?
There's a lot of issues within your question there. The bottom line is we need to make Kansas grow. Kansas was the worst economy in the central part of the United States, in the ag-driven part of the United States. We were the worst performing state in 2017. the absolute worst performing. We were the 4th worst in the nation. We don't need to tolerate that. We need a governor who understands that making Kansas grow means we can invest in education, we can invest in infrastructure, roads, we can invest in corrections, and all those other things that we need to invest in. If Kansas doesn't grow, we'll never get to where we need to be. And so we're focused on making ag grow, knowing that ag drives the state economy. Over 40% of our economy here in Kansas is ag. Some states around us are even more ag-driven, but you know what? We performed even worse than those states around us. We're going to make Kansas grow, and that means getting people in jobs. That means stopping or slowing this out-migration issue that we have here in Kansas, particularly out of rural Kansas, out of western Kansas. We need to slow that, and we can do that with some of the things that Jen has been doing with her Northwest Tech College in Goodland, and she can explain that here in just a moment. But we have so many things we can do as governor to improve the Kansas economy, including leaning in on costs every day and thinking about how we're going to make Kansas grow. And Jen, you've got a lot of good programs going on up there at Northwest Tech College where you're a part of.
Right. So your local economy kind of craves certain jobs. Right. The farmer of yesteryear is not the same as the farmer of the future. Well, the farmer of the future needs a lot of technology. Makes them more efficient. It's the way of the world. So we're putting technology in their hands, and we're training them how to use it effectively, save those dollars that they need to work the farm. We're seeing younger farmers being able to come back to the family farm and raise their families there, and there's a whole new breath about that new energy, and it's just really phenomenal. Many community colleges, tech colleges, even Fort Hays, you look to your community or the needs of your state and say, hey, how can we provide a student after graduation that industry needs? Let's keep them in Kansas, and those are good paying careers. Those are good paying jobs. Let's do that. Let's rebuild Kansas that way and stop the out-migration.
So how would this relate specifically to individuals who are not involved with families that are agriculture or people who aren't interested in farming?
There are many other jobs in Kansas, many needs. Nursing, we need surgeons, we need bankers, we need insurance agents, we need really good ones like the insurance commissioner here. It's very, very deep, the needs of Kansas. The jobs that are open in Kansas, 50,000 jobs are open in Kansas now?
That's right. There's over 50,000 jobs that are open, and that's more than the number of unemployed people. We need to focus on aligning our educational system with the jobs that are available, the jobs that are in our communities. And we can give examples of different school districts. K through 12 can actually be a part of that and can think of themselves as an economic driver in their local communities. If that local school district is focused on creating seniors that have come out of the school district that have certificates and other things, other training, like welders, like CRNs, other things that are needed in the local community, it's more likely that kids, when they graduate, are going to stay there because they're trained and equipped with the appropriate certificate to serve in those well-paying jobs and can stay in the community, will stay in the community. We need more thinking like that. We just don't have that coming out of the governor's office now. We need people who are thinking about how we're going to get more out of our educational dollar and how we can better align it with the needs of the local community. That will help slow the out-migration. That will help build the economies locally. It will help match employees with the jobs that are needed. It's good all the way around, rather than having our students, when they graduate from high school or tech school or somewhere else, go out of state for a job. We have those jobs right here. If we have them trained appropriately, we need to be thinking more globally rather than just dumping in more and more money into the school system without any accountability. We need accountability throughout our state government. We spend $7 billion of Kansas taxpayer money. And you know what? That's your money. It's not the state's money, but the people in Topeka think like it's their money. It's not your money, but yet you paid it. We need people, including a governor, and especially a governor and a lieutenant governor, who know that we need to be more accountable for all our dollars, including K through 12, including post-high school, including early childhood learning. More accountability for a better product out of each one of those levels. I tell you, the tune will change significantly in Kansas when Jen and I are focused on the issues of Kansas. She brings up a good point. We need a full-time governor who is paying attention all the time to the issues here in Kansas. That includes the leaning in on costs that we talked about. That includes making Kansas grow. And that includes, and maybe especially includes, accountability for every tax dollar that we're spending, including the educational tax dollar.
Okay. Let's hit on two things that you just made in your statement there. One, you mentioned that there are more jobs open now than there are people unemployed. If I remember correctly from my economy classes, it's good to have about a 4% unemployment rate. Mm-hmm. Now, are you afraid that since there are more jobs than people in Kansas, that's going to pretty much diminish the unemployment rate and thus hurt the economy?
It won't hurt the economy. What hurts the economy is that we don't have enough workers now. If we can't fill those open jobs, Kansas won't grow. It comes from all kinds of places. Slowing the out-migration will help that issue. Getting our kids trained in the right way with the right credentials for the jobs we have available will help that issue. There's all kinds of issues in there. We will be supportive of fully screened legal immigration. Western Kansas, especially southwest Kansas, needs that. We need to secure the border. We are 100% behind Mr. Trump and his efforts to secure the border, to reduce chain migration, to stop the lottery system, all of those things. That needs to be fixed. But we need to be and will be supportive of fully screened legal immigration.
And the visas.
The H-2C visas that are being discussed right now, absolutely need to work with those. Go ahead.
Right, right. It seems silly for a farmer or an ag producer to hire an immigrant and then they have to go on 6 months later. You barely trained them. And if they're a good worker and they're sponsored by you, that visa should last 2-3 years. These people want to work and they're filling jobs that we don't want to do sometimes.
They need to be fully screened, legal, and we'll be supportive of that, highly supportive.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, the second thing you made in the statement previously was having accountability. Now, I've had a conversation with current Republican nominated candidate for the 111th District House, Barbara Wassinger, about accountability. And she, to me at least, didn't seem to have a real answer of how that accountability was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of how you would want that accountability to be secured?
Oh, it's real clear. And again, if you have a business background, it's easy to understand how you can achieve that. I'm a CPA. I've had a business background, a career in business, came into politics at the end of my business career. You can do that through several ways. You can have regular audits. You can demand accountability in the legislation. For example, not this last session, but the session before, a year and a half ago, we gave another $300 million to school districts to reduce the 25% on average of underperformance, people who are not performing at grade level, to reduce that number. Almost no accountability in that $300 million in that statute for reducing the 25%. The share of that $300 million that goes to each individual school district will continue regardless of whether that number goes down, stays the same, or heaven forbid even goes up. They'll still get that money. We need more accountability. There was an effort by some legislators to have some accountability in that, and they didn't have a governor who was visible on the subject, who was leading the way. We can do things like that. That's within the governor's power and needs to be a thing that the governor talks about all the time. Accountability for the dollars that we're spending of yours and everybody else who pays taxes. We need accountability and better alignment with the outcomes from that. That will help so much in making people feel confident that their state is spending their money in a productive, fruitful sort of way, rather than just throwing more money at it like we have in the past. There's no way that you can understand that concept if you haven't served in the business community for a while, just like I have, just like Jen has. We bring business backgrounds to the state of Kansas. We have a $7 billion budget of Kansas taxpayer money that we spend, and we have very little accountability built into it. You'll see that change.
Okay. Now, you have mentioned education. Let's get into that a little bit. The Kansas State Supreme Court has recently said that the budget from the last, or passed by the last legislative session, does not fit under one of the requirements of Kansas state constitutional law. What are your thoughts on that ruling, and whether you support it or not, what can be changed to?
Well, I think we need a governor who's going to lead the way on a constitutional amendment. We really need more definition around the word suitability in our Constitution. That's been there since 1966. It needs a better definition, and we need a constitutional amendment to achieve that. We're short the two-thirds support. In Kansas, we have a really high hurdle that we have to meet. A two-thirds passage, a two-thirds approval in the House and in the Senate, and then the governor signs it. We're quite a ways from that two-thirds majority in the House, but we don't have a governor who's out visible on that topic. We really need to talk about how we can get out of this endless cycle of litigation and move on and teach our kids, spend our time and effort teaching our kids rather than on litigation.
Did you know my son is nearly 17 years old, and I don't know what it's like to have a child that is not, that their education is not in the court.
Okay.
That is a weird feeling. I don't know what that is, to operate out of court.
Well, and I will go back to your website specifically. You said pretty much you have or will support limits to the state Supreme Court in defining what is suitable according to the Kansas Constitution. Isn't it, without the conversation of having a constitutional amendment at all, isn't it the job of the justices to determine that, regardless of what the legislative or the executive branches are thinking?
No, the legislature sets the statutes and also writes the Constitution that gets approved by the people of Kansas. It takes a two-thirds majority in the House and the Senate, the governor signs, and then a simple majority of Kansans to do a constitutional amendment. So the big hurdle is in the House and the Senate. We'll support changes to be made so that Kansas can better manage its schools.
Okay. All right. So let's hit on keeping college graduates, high school graduates, and folks here. You say that, and you've already stated that you want schools to analyze the needs of the local community and of the businesses to determine who or what skills and certifications that are needed. How does that fit with students whose personal desires and or career desires lie in places outside of the state?
It doesn't. If you want to study the migration pattern of the great white shark, you're not going to do it here, and you're probably not going to go to college here. It's just economics. It's just common sense.
Right.
We don't want you to go. We'd hope you don't. But if that's your passion, then I encourage you to go do that.
Okay. So obviously then you'll have those folks who are leaving the state.
Yeah.
How exactly are you going to be able to market to the folks outside of Kansas to come here and work here?
There's a lot of good ways, some that haven't been tried, some that are so obvious they're staring us in the face. One is your school, Fort Hays State University, has an alumni database. You know where your alums are. You know those that came here to go to school and live outside of the state. Let's have the state work with schools like yours to advertise, to reach out to, and try to bring back some of those alums, the kids who grew up here and went to school here and understand what Kansas is all about. They'd probably like to come back and raise their families here. We need to, first of all, target those people who have moved out of the state that grew up here. We can do that. Fort Hays can help us do that. Kansas State, where I went to school, can help us do that. KU, all of those schools can help us do that. We need to focus on innovative, imaginative ideas for recruiting families back to Kansas. We need workers. Kansas won't grow without workers. We need workers. We need workers in the ag community. We need to work on bringing some of those families back. We won't get them all. We know that. We know that people will leave the state. People need to get training maybe outside of the state. But we can slow that out migration. There's been no effort to do that. We need to show kids opportunity here. We need to give them training that matches the needs of the local community and the jobs that are there. If we are more thoughtful about it, just like any other issue we address, if we can be thoughtful and calm in our decision making and try to come up with innovative ideas that actually work, we'll make it happen. We did that in the insurance department. We can do that everywhere in state government. We focused on public-private partnerships, getting a program going where local or outside companies could invest in it and help us achieve some of our objectives in the insurance department. We did all kinds of things. We started an insurance certificate that Fort Hays State University actually is an active participant in, where if you get 12 hours in insurance-related courses, you can then earn an insurance certificate that goes with your accounting degree, your business degree, your marketing degree, your psychology degree, you name it. It's helping kids get qualified for jobs that are here in Kansas. We have so many jobs, in this case, in the insurance industry around the state that aren't being filled. We're doing things specifically to match kids up with the jobs that are here, and it's worked wonderfully. We went from about 55 students in insurance-related courses 2 years ago to 482 enrolled in insurance-related courses for this coming fall. What a growth, what a growth. And you know what? That was funded by private industry. And if we have a governor who has a business background and a lieutenant governor who has a business background and know what it means to make things work, we can get a lot of those things done. We don't need to be always focused on the political benefit like we have in the current governor and the other governors before. We need to focus on the long-term benefit to Kansan. I'm a fourth-generation Kansan. You're a multiple-generation Kansan. We can make this state a lot better than it is.
Let's hit on the position of lieutenant governor for a little bit here. Yeah. So a lot of people see lieutenants, vice, whatever, under the immediate executive position as absent, not important, that sort of thing. And a lot of people have been passive about those sorts of positions. To my recollection, nobody even knew about Governor Collier while he was lieutenant governor because he was probably never around. So as lieutenant governor, are you going to be active in your position, or are you going to be passive and fade away into the background of your running candidate?
So I believe if you're going to serve, you better well serve, and you better be moving. There's no need to sit and take a spot in history if you're not going to do something that changes your state for the better. Ken and I had that discussion when we talked about my lieutenant governorship. He says, I'm not sure you're going to be happy being passive. And I said, you gosh darn right I'm not going to be. That won't work. It shouldn't. And it shouldn't be acceptable to the taxpayer.
Okay. All right. So in terms of a campaign, though, against the other Republicans in terms of the primary election, you guys are kind of underdogs right now, if I may say. How are you guys not only differentiating yourselves from the other campaigns, but making it to where you can earn the trust and the vote of Kansans across the state? Well, Republicans specifically, I should say.
There's a rather clear path forward. People understand what we're saying. They understand that Kansas needs to grow instead of being at the bottom, at the very bottom like we have. We need to grow, and we need to make Kansas more productive, leaner, leaning in on costs all the time. And there isn't anybody else in this group that is talking about those two things, those two incredibly important things. So we're getting a lot of traction. People understand I'm a CPA. They can relate to that. They understand that I'm a businessman and not a politician. I've been in elected office exactly 3.5 years now, and look what an incredible job we've done in that short time. We'll do the same thing in the broader state government. That's why I selected a lieutenant governor that had a business background as well. We need people who can make things work, who can make decisions, who can lean in and lean forward and make Kansas grow and reduce costs. We have to think about that all the time. That has to be our underlying theme always.
We need a competent, full-time governor that has service in his heart and he's ready to go. And that's what we get with Ken.
All right, and our final question for today, how would you guys describe your campaign in its entirety, including subjects that aren't specifically covered within your issues on the website? How would you guys describe that in a brief sense to all of Kansans?
We're going to run Kansas in a more business-like manner, including social service departments that really need a focus of compassion and focus on the vulnerable people, the children, the disabled adults. We need a focus on making it all work better, and we're going to do that. What I would like to remind everybody to do is remember KS for KS, Ken Selzer for Kansas. When you go vote on August 7th, remember KS for KS, you can do that. Or Ken and Jen, that works too. Remember either one of those. Both of our names will be on the ticket. And just know that Kansas will be represented well, and we'll make Kansas really attractive again for our young people, for our adults, and make its economy grow.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us today. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
If you would like to vote for Ken Selzer and Jen Sanderson this August 7th, please be a registered Republican, of course, and cast your vote on August 7th. If they do make it past the primaries, they will be up for election this coming November. For all your latest news, please check out TigerMediaNetwork.com and stay tuned to all our social media. Thank you.